The Believing Brain by Michael Shermer is like a mirror, showing us the fascinating way our minds work and why we often cling to beliefs that don't always make sense. Imagine your brain as a tireless, hard-working engine. It doesn't stop, not for a moment. Its job: to make sense of the endless stream of sensory data coming at you every second of your life. The brain is always on the hunt for patterns, like a curious detective piecing together a puzzle. But here's the catch: it doesn't always solve the puzzle correctly. Shermer reveals a deep truth about us: our brains are wired to seek meaning. Once a pattern emerges, even if it's random or coincidental, our brain leaps to assign meaning to it. It's like spotting shapes in the clouds. You see a heart or a dragon, and suddenly, your imagination takes over. The brain turns these patterns into beliefs, shaping how you see the world. But here's where things get tricky: not all these beliefs are rational. Now, pause for a moment and reflect. Have you ever knocked on wood to avoid bad luck? Or felt uneasy walking under a ladder? These small actions are born from beliefs, often deeply ingrained in us. Shermer explains that our brains prefer believing something, anything, rather than facing the unknown or admitting uncertainty. Why? Because beliefs make us feel safe. They give us a sense of control in a chaotic world. But there's a flip side. This belief-making engine can lead us astray. Think about it: how many times have people held on to ideas, convinced they were true, only to later realize they weren't? From superstitions to conspiracy theories, from stubborn biases to unfounded fears, our brains sometimes trick us. Not because they're faulty, but because they're doing their job, finding patterns, connecting dots, and creating meaning, even when no real connection exists. Here's the empowering part: recognizing this tendency is the first step toward freeing ourselves from irrational beliefs. Shermer doesn't criticize us for having these tendencies; instead, he invites us to understand them. By acknowledging that our brains work this way, we can take a step back and question: is this belief serving me? Is it grounded in truth? It's an emotional realization, isn't it? To know that your mind, your constant companion, might sometimes lead you astray, not out of malice, but because it's trying to protect you, to make sense of a complex, unpredictable world. It's like realizing a well-meaning friend gave you bad advice. You don't get angry, you appreciate the intent and then make your own choice. Shermer's insights empower us to take control. Instead of letting our brains run on autopilot, creating beliefs that might hold us back, we can step into the driver's seat. We can question, learn, and grow. The human brain is a miraculous tool, capable of incredible things. And while it might be a belief engine, it's also adaptable. We can train it to look deeper, to seek truth over comfort, and to let go of ideas that no longer serve us. The journey of understanding your own mind is a powerful one. It's not just about dismantling irrational beliefs, it's about discovering the immense potential of your thinking, your reasoning, and your ability to create a life guided by truth, curiosity, and growth. In recognizing the patterns of your own mind, you gain not just self-awareness but the power to shape your beliefs, and, ultimately, your reality. Humans, by nature, are wired to seek explanations for the world around us. It's a deeply ingrained trait, stemming from our ancestors who needed to make quick judgments to survive. But here's the fascinating part: we often lean toward believing in external, sentient forces, even when there's no evidence to support them. Why is that? It's because our minds crave order, meaning, and purpose. The idea of randomness or chaos feels unsettling, so we instinctively fill in the blanks with explanations that involve intentional, external forces, whether they're real or not. Think about it. If our ancient ancestors heard a rustle in the bushes, it was safer to assume a predator was lurking than to dismiss it as the wind. This survival mechanism served them well. Over time, it shaped our brains to see patterns and attribute events to purposeful causes. But in modern life, this wiring can lead us astray. It's why so many people believe in ideas or forces they can't see or prove, because it feels safer, more comforting, and less chaotic than facing the unknown. Now, let's talk about skepticism. Skepticism is not about rejecting everything outright. It's about approaching claims with curiosity and a critical eye. It's the ability to say, "That sounds interesting, what's the evidence?" Instead of blindly accepting something, skepticism encourages us to investigate, ask questions, and weigh the facts. This is the foundation of the scientific approach, and it's a skill that can protect us from falling into the trap of false beliefs. Scientists, in particular, must embody this skeptical mindset. Why? Because most claims, especially extraordinary ones, turn out to be false. Science progresses by questioning everything, by testing and retesting ideas, and by not settling for easy answers. It's a humbling process. For every breakthrough, there are countless hypotheses that didn't hold up under scrutiny. But this is the beauty of science. It's not afraid to admit when it's wrong and to change course based on new evidence. As individuals, we can learn from this approach. While it's natural to want to believe in something, true growth comes from being willing to ask tough questions and confront uncomfortable truths. Skepticism is not about tearing down beliefs for the sake of it, it's about building stronger, more reliable foundations for what we choose to accept as true. And when we do this, we become not just thinkers, but seekers of truth, unafraid of uncertainty and empowered by knowledge. Michael Shermer, in his thought-provoking exploration of human belief systems, delves into the psychology behind why we often cling to ideas or act on thoughts that lack solid evidence or rational grounding. He identifies two primary drivers of this phenomenon, patternicity and agenticity, concepts that reveal just how much our brains prioritize meaning over logic. Patternicity, seeing order in chaos. At its core, patternicity refers to our brain's tendency to find patterns in the randomness of life. Imagine staring at clouds and spotting the shape of an animal, or hearing hidden messages in the static of a radio. Our minds are wired to connect dots, even when those connections don't actually exist. Why? It's a survival mechanism. For early humans, spotting a potential predator, even if it turned out to be a harmless shadow, was better than missing a real threat. Over time, this instinct to detect patterns, even false ones, became deeply embedded in us. Agenticity, infusing patterns with purpose. But we don't stop at seeing patterns. Agenticity is the next step. We inject those patterns with meaning and assume some intentional force is behind them. It's why many people attribute events, good or bad, to divine will, fate, or even extraterrestrial beings. For example, a series of coincidences might feel like a sign from the universe, or a natural disaster might be interpreted as punishment from a higher power. This need to assign agency to events reflects our longing for purpose and control in an unpredictable world. 5 realms of irrational belief. Shermer then dives into 5 major areas where these tendencies play out, highlighting how patternicity and agenticity shape our beliefs. The afterlife. Humans have long wondered about what happens after death. The belief in an afterlife often stems from our inability to accept randomness in something as profound as existence itself. Patternicity leads us to see life as part of a greater, purposeful design, while agenticity convinces us there must be a guiding force, whether it's God, karma, or universal energy, that ensures life continues in some form. God. Religious beliefs are deeply tied to agenticity. The complexity of the universe, the beauty of nature, or the miracle of life itself feels too intricate to be random. Many see these as evidence of a divine creator. While patternicity finds that design in nature, agenticity ascribes it to an all-knowing being. Aliens. Our fascination with extraterrestrial life often springs from the same psychological roots. When we see unexplained lights in the sky or hear about mysterious phenomena, patternicity compels us to see a pattern, and agenticity leaps to the conclusion that intelligent beings must be responsible. The vastness of the universe makes it tempting to believe we're not alone, even in the absence of concrete proof. Conspiracies. Conspiracy theories thrive on patternicity and agenticity. A series of unrelated events can be woven into an intricate story of secret plots and hidden motives. Once the pattern is perceived, agenticity convinces us that powerful forces, governments, corporations, or shadowy organizations, are pulling the strings. Politics. In politics, patternicity often leads us to see trends or motives in decisions that might simply be the result of chance or human error. Agenticity then ascribes these patterns to ideologies, agendas, or even malice. This tendency fuels political polarization, as people become convinced that their opponents are orchestrating grand schemes against them. What can we learn? Shermer's analysis is both humbling and empowering. It reminds us that our brains, though incredible, are not infallible. By understanding these tendencies, patternicity and agenticity, we can become more mindful of how and why we form beliefs. It doesn't mean we have to abandon faith, wonder, or curiosity. Rather, it encourages us to question, seek evidence, and embrace a more rational approach to understanding the world. When we recognize the mechanisms behind irrational beliefs, we gain the power to rise above them. We can choose to live not in fear of randomness but in awe of our ability to make sense of it, and in doing so, strive for a life guided by both reason and wonder. Patternicity. How we jump to too many conclusions. Humans are natural-born detectives, wired to seek patterns in the chaos of life. This tendency, called patternicity, is a survival trait deeply rooted in our evolutionary past. It's what kept our ancestors alive in the wild and continues to shape how we perceive the world today. But, as with any tool, it's a double-edged sword. While it's incredibly useful, it can also lead us astray. The evolutionary advantage of patternicity. Picture our ancestors on the savannah, surrounded by unknown dangers. A rustling in the bushes could mean a lion stalking them, or it could be the wind. Those who assumed it was a predator and took action, even if they were wrong, were more likely to survive. On the flip side, those who ignored the noise, dismissing it as random, might have paid the ultimate price. In this sense, over-detecting patterns was a life-saving strategy. It's far safer to assume there's a connection, even if one doesn't exist, than to miss a real threat. This survival mechanism is deeply embedded in us, a gift from our ancestors who lived to tell their stories. But here's the twist. While it's vital to react quickly to potential dangers, there's no significant penalty for seeing patterns that aren't real. If someone mistook the rustling of leaves for a lion and ran, the worst they faced was embarrassment or wasted energy. However, the stakes were life or death for those who didn't detect a real threat. This is why patternicity persists. It errs on the side of caution, prioritizing survival over precision. The downside, jumping to erroneous conclusions. While this trait helped us survive in the wild, it can lead us to jump to conclusions in modern life. From believing in superstitions to seeing conspiracy theories everywhere, patternicity can trick us into finding connections where none exist. It's why we sometimes interpret coincidences as meaningful signs or see intent behind random events. For instance, imagine hearing about a lucky charm that someone swears brings good fortune. Your brain, wired for patternicity, might start noticing evidence that supports this claim: a streak of good luck, a promotion at work, or a sunny day after carrying the charm. But in reality, these events are likely just coincidences. When high patternicity leads to genius. Interestingly, the same trait that causes us to see too many patterns can also spark groundbreaking discoveries. Michael Shermer shares the story of Kary Mullis, Nobel Prize-winning scientist whose ability to see patterns in everything led to his revolutionary work in molecular biology. Mullis invented the polymerase chain reaction, PCR, a technique that transformed science and medicine. Yet, Mullis also held beliefs that many would call outlandish. He denied the connection between HIV and AIDS, dismissed climate change, and believed in astrology. To some, he might have sounded like a lunatic. But his pattern-seeking brain allowed him to pursue unconventional ideas and connections others overlooked, leading to his monumental discovery. This highlights a paradox. The same patternicity that can mislead us into irrational beliefs can also drive innovation and creativity. It's the reason why some of history's most brilliant minds, like Mullis, Newton, or even Tesla, walked the fine line between genius and eccentricity. Striking a balance. So, how do we make the most of patternicity without falling into its traps? The key lies in combining our natural pattern-detecting abilities with skepticism and critical thinking. While it's human to see connections, we must pause and ask, is there evidence? Is this pattern real, or am I seeing what I want to see? Understanding patternicity empowers us. It explains why we sometimes jump to conclusions, helps us appreciate our brain's incredible capabilities, and reminds us to keep our minds open, but not so open that we let irrational beliefs take root. By striking this balance, we honor the evolutionary gift of patternicity while staying grounded in reason. It's a beautiful reminder that our brains, though imperfect, are capable of remarkable things, when guided by curiosity and wisdom. Agenticity, the tendency to see a force behind the unknown. Humans have a deeply ingrained need to make sense of the world, and when faced with the unknown, we instinctively search for an explanation. This is where agenticity comes into play, our tendency to believe that unseen forces or entities are responsible for the mysteries we can't immediately unravel. Why randomness feels unnatural. Randomness is uncomfortable. It feels chaotic, unsettling, and incomplete. We are wired to believe that things happen for a reason. If a storm destroys a village, it feels easier to attribute it to an angry deity or a moral failing than to accept it as a random weather event. This inclination stems from our evolutionary need to detect threats and assign causes quickly. If we hear rustling in the bushes, we assume there's a predator rather than dismiss it as random noise. Better safe than sorry. Over time, this habit of looking for agency extended beyond immediate threats to broader, more abstract concepts. The disappearance of mystical forces. As science has advanced, many of the mysteries that once baffled humanity have been explained. Storms are no longer viewed as divine punishments but as the result of atmospheric pressure and temperature changes. Solar eclipses are not omens of doom but predictable celestial events. Diseases aren't curses but biological phenomena caused by pathogens. Each scientific breakthrough has chipped away at the need for mystical explanations, replacing unknown forces with observable, rational causes. But mysteries persist. Despite our growing understanding of the natural world, there are still countless phenomena we can't readily explain. And where there's a gap in knowledge, agenticity thrives. Think about events like a loved one surviving a near-death experience against all odds. A series of eerie coincidences that seem too perfect to be random. The vastness of space, where the idea of "we're alone" feels both humbling and unsettling. In such cases, many people turn to external forces, a deity, the universe, fate, or even extraterrestrials, to fill the void of understanding. Beliefs come first, explanations follow. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to believe something and then, almost instinctively, start finding evidence to back it up? This natural tendency is one of the most defining traits of the human mind, and it reveals a lot about how we form and hold onto our beliefs. Instead of building beliefs based on evidence, we often do the exact opposite. We create the belief first and then look for ways to justify it. This process is deeply ingrained in our psychology and stands in stark contrast to the scientific method. The scientific method, a different path. In science, the process is reversed. Scientists start with observations or experiments to gather data, and only then do they form a theory to explain what they found. It's a rigorous, methodical approach that aims to remove personal biases. But in everyday life, our minds don't work like that. Instead of testing ideas to see if they hold up, we often cling to our beliefs, searching for evidence to support them while ignoring anything that contradicts them. Why we're wired this way? This tendency is tied to how our brains evolved. Our ancestors didn't have the luxury of testing every idea, they needed to make quick decisions to survive. If someone believed a certain plant was poisonous, they avoided it. They didn't need a lab to confirm it, the belief itself was enough to ensure caution. Over time, this survival mechanism became part of how we process information. But in today's world, it can lead to problems. The confirmation bias trap. When we form a belief, whether it's about a person, a concept, or a worldview, we naturally focus on evidence that supports it. This is known as confirmation bias, and it's one of the most pervasive psychological tendencies. For example, if you believe someone is untrustworthy, you'll notice every little thing they do that seems suspicious, while ignoring their acts of kindness. If you believe a certain diet works wonders, you'll focus on the one person who lost weight while ignoring the hundreds who didn't. This selective perception reinforces our beliefs, making them feel more solid and true, even if they aren't based on objective reality. Anecdotal evidence versus scientific proof. Here's where it gets tricky. Humans are emotional beings, and personal stories, anecdotal evidence, often resonate more than hard data. For instance, someone might dismiss overwhelming scientific evidence supporting evolution because they've heard a compelling story about creationism that aligns with their existing beliefs. Stories are powerful, they stick in our minds, tug at our emotions, and feel more real than abstract statistics. This is why debates like evolution versus creationism persist. It's not just about facts, it's about deeply held beliefs and the emotional narratives that support them. Breaking free from the cycle. The good news is, understanding this tendency empowers us to think more critically. Here are some ways to challenge the beliefs first, explanations later mindset. Pause before judging. When forming a belief, ask yourself, what's the evidence? Instead of relying on gut feelings. Seek contradictory evidence. Make it a habit to look for information that challenges your belief. It's uncomfortable but essential for growth. Prioritize data over anecdotes. While personal stories are compelling, balance them with scientific evidence to get a clearer picture. Be open to change. Understand that changing your mind isn't a weakness, it's a sign of intellectual honesty and strength. The power of awareness. Acknowledging that beliefs come first doesn't mean you're stuck in this pattern forever. By recognizing this natural tendency, you can take control, think more critically, and make decisions based on a balanced view of reality. Imagine a world where people didn't cling to their beliefs but instead sought understanding through curiosity and evidence. It's a challenging path, but it's one that leads to greater truth, wisdom, and unity. Beliefs shape our world, but we have the power to shape our beliefs. Let's use that power wisely. The solution? Embrace the scientific method. If there's a way to rise above the traps our minds set for us, confirmation bias, patternicity, agenticity, it's this, embracing the scientific method. But it's not just about accepting its conclusions, it's about understanding how and why it works, and trusting its process to guide us toward truth. What makes the scientific method powerful? The scientific method isn't perfect, but it's the best tool we have to separate fact from fiction. It's built on a foundation of curiosity, skepticism, and rigorous testing. Here's why it matters. It starts with questions, not assumptions. Unlike our tendency to jump to conclusions, the scientific method begins with observation. It doesn't assume, it investigates. It demands evidence. Every hypothesis must be tested, and only those backed by solid evidence survive scrutiny. It's open to change. Science evolves. If new evidence disproves a theory, the theory changes. This adaptability is its strength, not a weakness. By understanding and appreciating this process, we can learn to think more critically, question our own beliefs, and avoid being misled by biases or emotions. Why we need the scientific method now more than ever. The author highlights a striking problem. Many people still don't understand how the scientific process works. 70% of Americans don't grasp the scientific process. This means they may not recognize why evidence-based conclusions are more reliable than personal anecdotes or gut feelings. Yet, 75% believe in heaven and 72% in angels, showing how deeply rooted some beliefs are, even without empirical evidence. In contrast, only 45% believe in Darwin's theory of evolution, despite overwhelming scientific support for it. These numbers reveal a disconnect between faith in unproven concepts and trust in well-established scientific ideas. The human need for belief. Why does this gap exist? It's because believing is easy, it's comforting. Science, on the other hand, can feel cold and challenging. It doesn't always give us the answers we want, and it requires patience, humility, and the willingness to be wrong. Believing in heaven or angels offers hope, meaning, and reassurance. Science, with its focus on evidence and skepticism, might seem less emotionally satisfying, but it gives us something just as valuable, the truth. How to embrace the scientific method in everyday life. Here's how we can apply the scientific approach to our own thinking. Start with curiosity. Instead of jumping to conclusions, ask questions. Be curious about the world and open to learning. Look for evidence. Don't rely solely on what feels right or aligns with your existing beliefs. Seek out data, studies, and expert opinions. Be skeptical but open-minded. Healthy skepticism means questioning claims, but it also means being willing to change your mind when presented with convincing evidence. Understand that not knowing is okay. It's better to admit uncertainty than to cling to a belief without basis. Science thrives on the unknown. It's what drives discovery. Appreciate the journey. Science isn't about instant answers. It's about continuous exploration and improvement. Building faith in science. For the scientific method to gain wider acceptance, we need to make it accessible and relatable. It's not just for labs and scientists, it's a mindset that anyone can adopt. By showing how it leads to breakthroughs in medicine, technology, and understanding, we can help people see its value in their lives. Hope through understanding. Belief and evidence don't have to be at odds. By embracing the scientific method, we're not giving up hope or wonder, we're enriching it. Science doesn't diminish the mystery of life, it deepens it. It gives us tools to explore those mysteries with awe and respect for the complexities of the universe. The author's call to action is clear: let's bridge the gap. Let's strive to understand the process, trust its results, and use it to guide our decisions. In doing so, we empower ourselves to think critically, make informed choices, and embrace the beauty of discovery. Beliefs may comfort us, but science enlightens us, and in that light, we find progress, truth, and a deeper sense of connection to the world around us. Noteworthy insights from Michael Shermer's observations. Michael Shermer's exploration of human belief systems provides profound insights into why we hold on to certain beliefs, the role of skepticism, and the surprising ways intelligence interacts with faith and logic. Let's unpack these fascinating ideas. 1. Skeptics have a higher locus of control. Skeptics tend to believe that they are the ones steering their lives. They see their actions and decisions as the primary forces shaping their outcomes. In contrast, those who strongly believe in external forces, whether it's fate, God, astrology, or some mystical power, often feel less in control of their lives. This lower locus of control means they are more likely to attribute events to external causes rather than their own efforts. Why does this matter? Empowerment. A higher locus of control fosters confidence. When you believe you can influence your own destiny, you're more likely to take action, face challenges, and persevere through hardships. Dependency. Conversely, attributing everything to external forces can make you passive, waiting for something or someone else to change your circumstances. 2. The principle of positive evidence. In science, it's not enough to poke holes in an opposing belief. To prove your theory true, you need positive evidence, evidence that not only discredits the other belief but actively supports your own. For example, creationists often critique Darwinian evolution with claims they believe weaken it. However, pointing out flaws, or perceived flaws, in a scientific theory does not automatically validate creationism. To gain scientific credibility, creationists would need evidence for their theory, not just against Darwin's. This principle is empowering because it reminds us: criticism alone doesn't build truth. True understanding comes from presenting strong, evidence-backed ideas, not just tearing others down. 3. Intelligence doesn't immunize against belief. Richard Dawkins, in The God Delusion, famously claimed that higher intelligence and education correlate with lower belief in God. Michael Shermer challenges this, arguing that intelligence isn't the deciding factor. It sounds like the believing brain resonated with you in several meaningful ways. You're not alone in finding the chapter on intelligent creators especially intriguing. Shermer's idea that we might not be able to distinguish between a super-advanced alien species and a divine being certainly makes you pause and reconsider how we define the unknown or unexplained. It's also great that you found Shermer's ideas on rational thinking and becoming more BS-resistant useful. His arguments for critical thinking and skepticism are powerful tools for navigating a world full of misinformation. Your connection with Shermer's perspective, as a sort of kindred soul, highlights how well he is able to explain complex topics with clarity and humor. It sounds like his exploration of human belief systems has sparked some meaningful reflection on your own thinking. Would you say it changed the way you approach beliefs or how you assess claims?